we are wondering, how do we prepare? But then we said, Gina is cool. We'll have a conversation.
Absolutely. When I went out and visited you a few years ago to do work together, I was really struck by just how interconnected your work was with the community and with just who you are as people. And I'd love to just hear a little bit more about your community and about your work in the community.
So Pangea is 25 years old. In fact, we spent the entire 25th year in COVID, in the pandemic, um, and in these 25 years, one of the things that we created Pangea for was to bring people together from very different backgrounds and ethnicities to create work. The word Pan means universal. Gaia is the Greek goddess of the earth, and Pangea is that supercontinent that existed before drift happened when the whole world was one landmass. So we really took that very seriously and planned and to bring people from different backgrounds together. Our question has always been, how do we stay relevant? How do we do work that's relevant? And how do we do work in a way that really includes everyone in the community?
When I was talking with my colleagues at NFF, I was trying to give them a background on how amazing you were and just my own personal experience. And I was really struck by how much your work and your art connected with the community and with your lives and just your humanity and just like the interconnectedness, your spirituality. Tell me where that comes from.
Spirituality, Gina, that's really at the core of our consciousness. It's we wanted to like what we do before we begin any meeting, which we have done even when you came to visit, that we do what we call this 2 minutes, and we always sit in a circle, and we have a lamp in the center, and then we ring the bell and just exhale out the world that is outside, and so that we can, it's a moment of collective breath, that we breathe together, and then we begin this journey together. And we do that in the beginning of our meetings, in the beginning of our rehearsal, because some artists of color, this is their third job. They work at the barista, they work and then they come, and we are expecting top level intentional physical work, and when we create work, and so this gives everybody a time to just like breathe out the world outside and breathe in.
Yeah, that's so amazing. And, as someone who's been working with you and seen your work, I think that is so felt in everything that you do. But I think it would be great if you could just walk me through maybe like a recent favorite project of yours, just to kind of give a sense for like, what does that look like? What does that feel like? What are you doing when you are doing the work? How does the artist experience it? How does the audience experience it? Just would love to get a sense of that.
If you had asked this question, say 2 years ago, before the pandemic, and before the pandemic of the virus and the pandemic of racism that erupted here, my answer would be very different. But post brother Floyd's murder, and all our work has become so much more intentional. It's with intention we strengthen communities. We take our community less, our friends, whether it's personal circle or professional colleagues, less for granted. We were always standing at the intersection of social justice and art. But when COVID hit and all the businesses over here closed, and so many of the artists who would, Pangea would a second job, they would work in these restaurants and come, so their source of income got completely taken away. So what we did was, as much as we can, get money to the hands of the artists, so that basic survival was in conversation. And even within Pangea staff, we provided seed money to everyone, all our 12-member staff, and we said, you respond to to the street, you respond to George Floyd, you respond to, what we realized that it just gave us a breakthrough of democratizing the process. So, and each one, when somebody was doing something, the rest of the staff were supporting. Another person did something, rest of the staff. So it built a tremendous amount of, strength.
You're absolutely right. I can really hear such a shift that's happened in how you're thinking about your work. Could you speak a little bit about just like what are the things that people don't see? If you're an audience member at Pangea, what are the things that you think are so important that people don't see in the work that you would love them to know about?
I think that we would really love the audience to know about our process.
Mm-hmm.
We would love them to know, because I feel like for us, the process is as important, if not more, than what gets presented. Our process is very much about community. It's very much like Dipankar said, it's sitting in circle. It's also thinking deeply about the politics of space. It's like where people are on stage, who comes first, who enters the room first. Those things are very, very important. And so I think that what people will see is the thought that goes behind the work that we do, and how we hold other artists as well, and how we hold artists, playwrights, performers, dancers, in a way that deeply respects their contribution to the process. I think they would see how our work is truly collaborative, though that might show up in the final performance as well. And they would also see the fact that we sit in a circle, and that the space itself is really open to everyone. I mean, of course, we have a director, we have writers, we have all of that. And at the same time, there is an openness in the room that is born of, making the space accessible to the people who are in the room. And everyone's idea is heard, everyone's idea is listened to. These are all practices that are to decolonize ourselves. And for us, I mean, both of us come from a country that has been colonized by the British. So much of our education as we were growing up was, in English, and it was also mostly English and American, mostly male dead white playwrights. And and so I think that part of our work has been in the last 25 to 26 years is how do we decolonize ourselves from this background that we come from. How do we respect the tremendous contributions of immigrants to this country? How do we respect the tremendous contributions of indigenous people who actually are the first peoples in this land? And also, how do we respect the contributions of those people who didn't choose to come here, who were brought here in chains? And so that's been some of our focus as we've done our work. And we work very, very closely with Somali, Latinx, indigenous people on our street. We live on a street called Lake Street, and Lake Street has been really affected by the violence this last year. And so we've worked very closely with artists and community members from these communities as well. I would say that's some of the right, Dipankar. Is there anything you would add to that?
No, and yes, the way we hold our community, the way we, the whole person comes to engage with us. I really believe that if the work gets done, and after 25, 30 years of experience, the work will get done. But in the process, whom are you working? Are we relevant? How relevant are we? We are talking all the philosophy that we are spouting. Is it being practiced? Which is our, my teacher would always say that, in South Africa, that apartheid is not happening between de Klerk and Mandela. Apartheid is the presence or absence of apartheid is the distance between, you and me right now, this 6 inches. We all have been made to feel in some form or the other where that we are dispensable and we don't count. And what Pangea is about is just the opposite. Those are the consciousness with which we approach our work.
Yeah, that's amazing. Oh, and such a wonderful breath of fresh air, just to hear that, no matter what, that you matter, right? That you
Yes.
are you are being seen. I guess I would love to just hear, because like everything that you're doing is so vibrant, is so meaningful, and just your ability to hold everybody in, and to acknowledge everyone, to really recognize that relationship matters and that that people matter. I would love to just hear, like, what would you tell somebody? What kind of advice would you give people who want to cultivate that in their own lives, who want to really increase or to have more of that sense of the healing power and that sense of community in their lives?
Just jump in and engage. I don't know. Yesterday it was interesting. I was listening to Ken Burns yesterday on CNN or something, but something that he said really struck me. And he said that, like, there is no time for cynicism right now.
Mhm.
I think it's very easy for us to become cynical because of what's happening. I mean, climate change is real. We're seeing that everywhere. We're seeing fascism rise everywhere. This is a time for us to wake up and actually make a change. And I say that having often getting up in the morning and feeling like, oh my God, this is too overwhelming. I can't deal with the number of things that are happening in my own life. And all I want to do is to go and crawl either crawl inside my bed or go out and like plant something new in my garden, which, by the way, I've done for the last 2 years. I'm just saying that I just also think that we can't afford to be cynical. And so, how do we actually rise up and engage with people in the community? And often it means then that more encounters are going to happen that are difficult. But but I think as human beings, how can we just keep cultivating our own self awareness and keep moving forward in the world as gracefully as we can?